I live in Baltimore. I'm about 60 miles as the crow flies from the huge concentration of data centers in Northern Virginia. And my bills are going up because of those data centers. This past winter, I've lived in this house for 20 years. I've had the highest utility bills I've ever had.
Oh,
And it's continuing into the summer as well, much higher summer bills than I've ever had. And that's because of the data centers in large part that are 60 miles from here.
your electric bill went up this year, but you didn't do anything different. Nobody in your household changed their habits that would explain that increase. But somewhere, maybe 60 miles away from where you're sitting, a building went up, and nobody in your community got any real say over whether it belonged there. But here's the good news: communities are fighting back, and a lot of them are winning. Right now, there are towns stopping these projects before they even break ground. But that only works if people know what's happening and organize against it. Today, I'm talking with Mitch Jones from Food and Water Watch. He spent over 20 years on climate, energy, food, and water policy issues. And now he's tracking AI data centers as they try to move into communities across this country. We're getting into higher electric bills, water use, land use, the noise, and the early health signals that are quite troubling. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly what questions to ask if one of these data centers is being proposed near you, and where to find the toolkit that can help you fight and win. Before we get into it, if you haven't grabbed my free guide, 10 words on your food labels that are lying to you, the link is right in the description, or you can just go to greenlivingnow.com. It takes about 5 minutes to read. You can print it out and take it with you to the store, and it'll change the way you shop. Mitch, I understand that you have worked in every policy category of food and water. Which one is your favorite?
Start with the hard questions.
Yes.
I have spent most of my time working directly in the climate and energy space. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. Fracking's banned in Maryland. We're not supposed to admit these things publicly, but I drafted that legislation for the
Oh,
bill
wow.
sponsor. I did a lot of work on the Green New Deal and those sorts of issues. I've been really active politically since I was a teenager. When the opportunity arose to join Food and Water Watch 18 years ago, I leapt at it.
What are the most important things about the data centers that you think
Mhm.
people need to know?
I think everybody tends to be fixated on the issue of electricity rates. It's the big headline issue. It's the issue that both the Trump administration, pro data center politicians of all stripes, and the industry itself is glommed onto as the issue. If they can just solve that, they think that opposition to data centers will go away.
Hmm.
And while obviously that's important, I live in Baltimore. I'm about 60 miles as the crow flies from the huge concentration of data centers in Northern Virginia. And my bills are going up because of those data centers. This past winter, I've lived in this house for 20 years. I've had the highest utility bills I've ever had
Oh,
this past winter. And it's continuing into the summer as well, much higher summer rates than I've ever had or bills than I've ever had. And that's because of the data centers in large part that are 60 miles from here. So that's a big issue. I don't want to downplay that, but I think that the issues that people don't talk about as much. So the issue of water consumption by data centers, the issue of land use changes in rural communities for data centers. I come from a small farming community. It was a small farming community in Illinois when I was growing up there. There are data centers in that community now. Those fields are being converted to warehouses for data centers.
right.
I think those are important issues. And then there are actually public health issues associated with data centers as well. The research on that is still in the early stages, and it mainly focuses on older, smaller data centers, the sorts of things that run this conversation. We should be honest, we couldn't be having a Zoom conversation right now without a data center. But that's a small data center compared to what they're building now. It's anywhere from 100 to 1,000 to, I just saw a proposal this morning, which would be 5,000 times the size of some of those data centers. And even with those smaller ones, we're seeing health effects like what we saw with fracking. So we're seeing lower birth rates. We're seeing higher incidence of miscarriages. We're seeing higher incidence of rare forms of cancer. Even by mentioning those three additional issues on top of electricity rates, we're just still scratching the surface of what this industry is doing to communities across the country and frankly across the world. I was
Right.
actually on a podcast in Finland of all places earlier this year talking about data centers and what they're doing in Finland, and I don't even speak Finnish.
My God. So I have so many questions. So first of all, how is it that a privately owned business, which is what I assume the data centers are, how are they able to get electricity paid for by the ratepayers instead of paying for it themselves?
They do pay some of it, obviously,
Okay.
but because of the way that the rates are set, a lot of businesses actually get a discounted rate compared to what retail people pay. And
Oh.
so private homes can end up paying more and in effect subsidizing the rates of larger businesses.
Oh, so not just the data centers. This can be
Not
other
just the
large
data. Yes,
businesses. Oh
exactly. It could
gosh.
be any large business in your community
Okay.
could be getting a lower rate than what you're paying yourself. And in that way, you are subsidizing them.
Mhm.
But also because they're creating more demand, it's just a
Supply
supply and
demand.
demand issue. They're creating more demand. So utilities are having to pay more money to purchase electricity in order to meet that larger demand. Supply is not keeping up with the growth of demand, and therefore the price of electricity is going up. The major addition of demand on our grid is data centers. When a data center gets added, if it's 100 megawatts of electricity, the largest ones now are 1.2 gigawatts. That's roughly the electric load of the city of San Francisco.
Oh my
The one I
goodness.
saw today, they were proposing is 5 gigawatts. So that's 5 San Franciscos. You can imagine the demand that's adding to a grid where you're not going to get 5 gigawatts of new electricity. And so, in order for your utility to be able to continue to provide electricity to your home, they're going to have to pay a lot more for that electricity, which means you're going to have to pay a
Right.
lot
I
more
got
for
it now.
electricity.
First of all, why do they have to be so large?
It's a matter of the economy of scale on the one hand.
Okay.
It's also, if I can get a little wonky for a second,
Sure.
it's tied to the type of artificial intelligence that we're pursuing here in the United States. We're all familiar with GPT and all the various chatbots.
Sure.
These chatbots are powered by something called large language models, or LLMs, which is the computer program that powers them. Our AI companies are pursuing something called artificial general intelligence. So, this kind of super intelligent, human like intelligent computer programs.
Okay.
You can be skeptical, like I am, as to whether or not that's possible. Another little tidbit about my past is I taught college philosophy for 11 years. So
Oh,
I have opinions about whether or not machines can be conscious. But
yeah, I'm there with you.
but but this is what our AI companies, this is what Sam Altman and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and all of those guys are pursuing. And let's face it, it's mainly guys are pursuing. Um,
Bros,
Tech
as we call
bros,
them.
yes, yeah, I call them the tech bro oligarchs.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thank you. You could use it.
I know. Thank you.
Anybody listening can use it.
Exactly.
But what they're pursuing are these, they call them frontier model bots, for lack of a better word, but LLMs or AI.
Mhm.
And that requires a lot of computational power. And so, in order to provide them with the computational power they need, they're wanting to build these hyperscale data centers, these 1 gigawatt,
see.
2 gigawatt, larger data centers. Again, for what we're doing right here, that's unnecessary.
We already
Anything that
have
powerful.
those
We
facilities.
already have those facilities. You don't
Right.
need to build these, do what we already have. The necessity, and I put that in scare quotes on purpose,
Yes.
is to pursue this type of AI. Now, in China, they're not pursuing this type of AI as much. They do pursue it, but it's
Really?
not their focus. Their focus is actually on embedded AI. So putting it into robotics, the sort of stuff that will actually
Oh,
displace blue collar
humans.
workers
Okay.
is what they're focused on in China, but that doesn't require the same computational level that pursuing GI, this
Right.
artificial general intelligence, requires. And so, although they are building large data centers in China, they don't need them to be as large as they are here because they're pursuing a different type of AI. So, part of the answer to your question is it's because of what our for-profit companies have
Yeah.
decided is going to make them the biggest profit, and that is pursuing this type of AI.
Because one of the things I've heard is, oh, we've got to keep up with China. That's why we've got to keep expanding. But what you're saying is that's actually not true.
It's not true. We're running two separate races on parallel tracks. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually working on a piece on this.
So the other thought I had was, is it possible with these large scale facilities to put them in places where they can use solar or wind or some kind of renewable energy with a battery storage?
Yes and no.
Okay.
If you're talking about a gigawatt of electricity capacity, first of all, yes, you would have to have battery storage because of the intermittency of renewables, but that's true for renewables anyway. We need to build battery storage because we need 11 years ago, Food and Water Watch called for a conversion to 100% renewable electricity by 2030. We had to amend that to 2035 because that's obviously not going to happen in the next 4 years, but obviously you need a lot of battery storage to make that happen. But to do that for a data center, 1 gigawatt, 1.2 gigawatt data center, I did a calculation, and for solar panels, it would require somewhere between 10 and 20,000 acres of land.
Oh, good God.
Yeah. So when industry says, oh, we'll just bring our own power, and everybody thinks, great, they're going to bring renewables. No, they're going to bring natural gas, fracked gas.
Ooh.
Or they're going to bring a technology which doesn't really exist yet, which is called small modular reactors, or what I call a distributed nuclear. So what they want to build is a tiny nuclear power plant in your neighborhood to power their data center.
Ooh.
Yeah, which we can't even deal with the waste from the nuclear power plants we already have.
Exactly.
So while theoretically you could,
it's not practical.
It's not practical. Yeah. And also there's the additional component of, if you're building all of this renewable energy for a data center, where's the renewable energy for the rest of the grid going to come from?
That's a very good question.
And that then also drives up the price of the components for renewable energy. So you get back to the supply and demand component. Apple recently, this is analogous, it's not the exact same issue, but Apple recently increased the price of iPads, iPhones. They had to increase the prices, and they admitted it was because of competition for the memory chips from data centers.
Oh, wow. So that's an consequence that we haven't even been talking about. We, the public, realizing that our electronic devices are probably going to go up in price because of the data centers.
Because of the data centers. So your computers are going to go up in price. Your TVs are going to go up in price. Cars now, of course, have a lot of computer memory built into them. So the price of cars will go up. Okay, now take that and can move it over to renewable energy, which already is getting hit by the fact that the Trump administration has eliminated the tax credits for it.
Yeah.
This goes for electric vehicles as well, which obviously rely a lot on computer technology. You're going to see these prices ripple throughout the economy because of this competition. So if you have 100 hyperscale data centers up at 1, 2, 5 gigawatts being built, wind, solar, battery costs are going to skyrocket for everyone, not just for the data center.
And then all the components that are needed for those large scale batteries too, right?
Yes, exactly. And then on top of that, everything that goes into transmitting the power. So everything that goes into the substation, everything that goes into the transmission wires, so all of that you're going to have competition for, because you're not going to probably build a 20,000 acre or 25,000 acre data center where you have all of the solar panels on site. You're going to have to build that elsewhere and bring the electricity in. I said earlier, solving the electricity issue is where the industry and Trump and pro data center politicians are at. But once you start to scratch the surface of that, you realize that their solutions aren't really solutions. They just cause more problems.
Yeah. Let's switch to the health issues that you mentioned.
Sure.
You talked about fertility issues.
Yep.
Are these sort of documented within a certain mileage of these centers? How does the data
it is localized? Again, there isn't a lot of data out there yet. And this is one of the reasons why we've called for a moratorium on data centers, so that we can actually catch up to where we're at. Because the difference between, say, a 10 megawatt or a 20 megawatt data center and a gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts, is huge, right? It's huge. So the few studies that are out there are for these smaller data centers. And I also sometimes have to say data or data, depending upon who you're talking
Right.
to, right?
Tomato, tomato.
Yeah, exactly. These smaller data centers, it is localized. I don't have the exact mileage of radius, but it is the local community within 5 to 10 miles of the community. But these data centers are going up all over the place, going up in suburbs, in rural areas. There are some in urban areas. Now it's harder to get these hyperscale ones in an urban area just
Yeah.
because of the amount of land required. But you could see, as I was driving around Washington, D.C., and looking at all of the empty office buildings, you could see potentially somebody wanting to repurpose those.
Yeah. Or just leaving lights on at night in empty office buildings. I never understood that.
Yeah, they leave the lights on, they have the AC on, there's nobody in
Right.
there.
It's ridiculous.
But if you were to repurpose one of those buildings as a data center, now you have that environmental problem, environmental public health problem to the suburb or even an urban area.
Yeah.
So it is localized, but when you're putting these everywhere, then it becomes a localized issue, which is everywhere.
So the health impact, the small studies that you've talked about, and there's so many things that are causing all these fertility
Yep.
issues, among other things, right? So was it a spike that they noticed after the data center was installed?
Yeah, I should be clear. It's a correlation,
Okay, not a causation.
not a causation. The scientists are being careful, but it's a correlation of a spike after the data center went in. Yeah,
So that's the observation.
that is the
Okay.
observation.
It's a likely culprit,
Yes,
but
yeah,
they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt.
exactly.
So another thing I had heard was, is it true that these data centers raise the ambient temperature outside of the
Yes,
data center?
yeah. They
By how
certainly can.
much?
I don't have an exact temperature degree for you. And again, it's going to depend upon the size. It's going to depend upon how effective the cooling system is,
Yeah, I
what
want to
sort of
talk
a
about that
cooling
next.
system it's using. But if it uses a water cooling system that discharges water back into waterways, that water is going to be at a higher temperature.
Yeah.
So
And does
you
it
get
have
thermal
anything
pollution
in
that
it
way.
besides the heat?
Yes. Yeah, it certainly does.
Might we find?
All sorts of rare earth minerals leach various types
Oh
of
my gosh.
pollution. I got a call from a reporter the other day. There's a case, your listeners can look it up. If you look up Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Meta, I can't remember the exact bacterium, but there's an extremely rare bacterium that is now
Ooh.
starting to show up in the wastewater system there. And it's being tied to the metadata center.
Is
And again,
that connected to any of these outbreaks of bacteria and food?
there's no
For
evidence of
that?
that. No, of course, they still don't really understand what's happening there yet. But it depends upon the data center, it depends upon the size, depends upon the components, and it depends upon the system. I know
Right.
that's not a satisfactory answer, but it
Right.
is where we're at. And again, the
Yeah.
studies are so new and so sparse at the moment that the full threat isn't understood at all, which again
Exactly.
is why we think we should stop building them until we can figure these things out.
Agreed. And is Erin Brockovich working on this topic
Yeah,
with?
she is. Yeah,
Is she
she has
working with
taken
you
it up
guys?
recently. We aren't working directly with her, but I did notice that one of her posts does direct people to our How to Stop a Data Center toolkit,
Oh,
which is
wonderful.
great.
Just since you mentioned that, why don't you just tell us where that is on your Food and Water Watch website?
Sure, you can go to foodandwaterwatch.org. You can just put in the search bar data centers. You'll get all of our information. It will be the toolkit. It will
Cool.
be all of the articles. We do have a report that does have some of these health concerns listed in it, as well as some of these other issues.
Mhm.
Our research team is churning out new information on data centers for people to use. But the toolkit really does give people a step-by-step guide as to how to go about opposing a data center in your community. You catch wind that one is being built. It gives you the step-by-step tools you need to organize opposition and
Excellent.
stop a data center from coming.
So the whole water issue, there's a pretty high profile case somewhere out west. Was it Oregon? There's one where one of the shark guys wants to build a huge
Oh,
data center, right?
yeah, Kevin O'Leary.
Kevin O'Leary. So I don't know if his was this particular case, but I read something about a community who was already being told to restrict their own water usage. And then the data center is taking
Yeah.
ridiculous amount of water. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Kevin O'Leary is an interesting fellow. Fox News recently had to retract a story in which he was attacking us, among others. News of
People,
all people.
babies who were concerned about this
Yes,
topic.
he did. And he claims that we're being funded by China, which is
Oh
untrue.
my gosh.
And that's the story that Fox News had to retract.
I'm glad they did.
Yeah, so am I.
Especially since you pointed out that this is not a race with China.
Yeah, it's not a race with China. No. In an instance of strange bedfellows, Tucker Carlson's outfit of all people actually ran a story debunking Kevin O'Leary on this issue,
Yeah,
which I'm
what's
quoted
happening with
in.
him?
Yeah, which I am quoted in, and he's up in Canada doing this. This is happening where data centers are going into the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona. There aren't as many going into California for a variety of reasons, but in the Southwest, where there already is competition for water,
Right.
there already are industrial uses of water that make no sense in a desert, whether it's
And
growing
such high
alfalfa,
heat all to boot.
high heat. Yeah, and there's high heat, so you're going to have even
More cooling
bigger
needed.
issues
Yeah.
with having to cool it down and creating even more localized heat. Even just from the concrete, you're getting heat islands.
Yeah.
But yeah, people are being asked to restrict water use in these communities in order for the data centers to get access to water. Going back to the electricity issue for a minute, there was a report just recently in the Financial Times, of all places, from London, that the CEO of Exelon, which is a huge utility that covers basically from Chicago all the way to Northern Virginia in one form or another, that we should expect blackouts because data centers will be using electricity and the rest of us are going to get cut off. So
our electric providers are prioritizing these data centers?
yes.
And
they get to decide who they want to prioritize.
wow.
Yeah. And there's a whole long story about that, which we can have another conversation about at another time, but it goes back to electricity deregulation and everything that happened coming out of Reaganism. Because if data centers don't have the water to cool, then they have to shut down. If they don't have the electricity, then obviously they have to shut down. Now, in many instances, they have backup power, but what they have is diesel generators.
I was going to ask you, what is their backup? Because I'm imagining there's going to be issues. Like we had a drunk driver run into some utility poles and we lost power for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Weird stuff happens.
It does. And there's a huge controversy in Memphis where Elon Musk built a data center and without bothering to get the permits, installed backup generators that are powered by diesel, which are causing, of course, localized pollution in that community.
Plus the noise must be bad too, right?
And the noise is horrifically awful.
Another piece that I saw in some story about these things make loud humming sounds.
They do. Oh, yeah, they are extremely loud. If you live near one, it is a constant humming sound that's
like torture.
Disrupts sleep. It disrupts sleep.
Right, because it's 24/7.
I mean, they don't shut down.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they get prioritized for the water and the electricity. That, and let's be honest, profit. Don't want data centers going offline because that's going to crash whatever is happening on those computer units. So they want to keep the data centers operating so that they don't lose that computational power. They don't lose access to whatever it is that's happening, which is completely opaque, by the way. We have no idea what any individual data center is actually doing, whether it's a cute cat meme or being used by the CIA to spy on people. We just don't know.
Exactly.
So they want to keep the data centers functioning, and so they get prioritized above the rest of us.
There just seem to be so many issues. And I guess I didn't know until you told us in the beginning that this is not because we all, or many of us, use Chat GPT and Claude and all those things. This is to create this new.
It's a very powerful, they call them frontier models. It's very powerful, cutting edge. Again, they're trying to mimic human consciousness, artificial general intelligence, AGI, which is not the same thing as GAI, which is generative.
Oh, yes, generative AI.
Which is the stuff that we use to make Instagram memes. The people who do that make.
Gotcha.
Although these hyperscale data centers are used for that as well. So yes, chatbots do use them. The reason why they're building them so large and why they're trying to push for all of this computational power, which the more computers you have, the more electricity you need. And obviously also the more cooling you need, which also then increases the amount of electricity you need.
Because you got to operate the cooling system.
You have to operate the cooling system. And actually, 75% of the water that is used by data centers is used for the generation of electricity,
Oh,
not for
wow.
the cooling systems.
Really?
Yeah. So it goes into generating the gas power. All of this is being used to pursue this extremely powerful large language model, the end of which is what we do not know. The tech oligarchs have this vision of the future where these things are going to be doing all of our work for us
Hanging out with elderly people so that they can live and all. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Although we know the chatbots like to convince people to kill themselves. So do we really want our parents as they age to be talking with a chatbot? It'd be like having Dr. Kevorkian on your cell phone.
Or operating our cars without our
Or
permission,
operating our cars without our permission. And
shutting
you're
our
already
cars down.
yes, or shutting them down if you miss a payment. They can already do that if you
Or
have
if they think
a
you're a bad
Tesla.
driver. I actually have a Honda Prologue, one
Yeah.
of those EVs. It's so oversensitive as far as braking that I'll be like 4 cars behind something, and all of a sudden my brake light thing is screaming at me.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? And I thought about that. What if we started being told about how we drive? And if they didn't like the way we were driving because the car was telling me I wasn't braking fast enough, I get some sort of demerit or they shut my car down. It
Or
sounds
your insurance
absurd,
goes
but
up. Or your insurance goes up.
oh yeah, that too. It
Because
did actually for the EV. I went up
yeah,
$30 a month.
but this is one of the things that when we get into the surveillance aspect of it is a deep concern.
Yes.
If you have flock cameras, if you have an EV which is attached to the internet or is attached to somebody, will your insurance company manipulate your rates based on data that it's buying from these companies? And the answer is yes, at some point they will, unless we prohibit it. And we're already seeing Teslas in automatic driver mode accelerate for no reason whatsoever.
I would never trust a self-driving
Well,
car.
no, I would never either. I have a rental car right now because mine's in the shop and it has that lane correction.
Oh
Again,
yeah,
I live in Baltimore. Sometimes you gotta shift lanes to avoid getting hit by somebody, right?
exactly.
And it
And
auto
does it make your
corrects.
car vibrate
Oh
really?
yeah, it vibrates and auto corrects the steering. I hate it.
Yikes.
But I saw a video the other day of a Tesla that was stopped at a train track and the car accelerated
Oh my
through.
word.
It took out the arm guard and went straight through. And the car, it thankfully did not get hit, but it came very close to getting hit by
Oh,
a
that is
passenger train.
terrifying.
Yeah, it's a terrifying, to me, dystopian future that the tech oligarchs are selling us, but that's what they're building these things for.
Right. And like you said earlier, too, that this is largely about profit. It's not that we
Yeah.
really need any of this.
No,
What can people do? Give us some solutions and some hope.
I'm not going to tell people to stop using their cell phones or stop
Right, because
scrolling
that
on
genie's already out of the
Instagram.
bottle.
It's, yeah, the genie's out of the bottle and you can't put it back in again. I think right now what we need to do is there is political momentum against the data center industry in this country. Silicon Valley and their backers on Wall Street are scared. They don't understand what's happening. They came out and they thought somehow telling us all that they're going to wipe out 26 million jobs, or in the case of Elon Musk, every job is going to go away.
That was supposed to be a good thing?
And that was supposed to be a good thing. And now they're like, oh, wait, never mind. We take it back because they realized people didn't like that. They don't seem to understand that the opposition to a data center in a community is organic in that people are learning from other communities what it means to have a data center be built in your community. So the things that we can do, I work in politics. And so, of course, this is the answer I'm going to give, but they're political.
Yeah.
You need to pay attention to your city councils, your town meetings, your county councils, your state legislatures, and also Congress, but those local ones first, because these companies try to sneak in and they try to get their approvals. They are having local officials sign non-disclosure agreements.
Ooh.
So they won't even allow your elected representative to tell you that they're talking to them about data centers. Yeah, that look on your face.
That sounds like a
It's a
conflict
huge
of interest
conflict.
for our legislators.
That's not a democracy anymore.
No.
That is not a democracy. It's an oligarchy.
Exactly.
But pay attention. Go to our website again, foodandwaterwatch.org, and look at that toolkit.
Yep.
You can also reach out to us. We have a volunteer network that you can join. We have a data center team on that volunteer network.
Oh, cool.
We are more than happy to help educate people about how to stop these facilities in their communities. But many states have state level moratorium legislation being proposed.
Yeah, we had it here in Vermont and our governor did not sign it.
And there's one sitting on the desk of Governor Hochul in New York at the moment. We're waiting to see whether or not she'll sign it. We originally were pursuing a 3-year moratorium. The legislature passed a 1 year, which is better than nothing.
Yep.
Not adequate, but better than nothing. So we're going to see if she will sign that legislation. But across the country, and it's coming from both Democrats and Republicans, actually.
Exactly.
There was a moratorium bill introduced here in Maryland that was put in, quite frankly, by MAGA Republicans.
Oh,
The same is true in Oklahoma.
really?
It's a cross-cutting issue because people of all stripes live in small towns
Absolutely. And they're all impacted
and they're
by
all
this.
impacted by it.
Yeah.
So I would say pay attention to your local governments, pay attention to your town, city, county,
Yep.
pay attention to your state legislature, urge your state legislators to support a moratoria. And then we also have, since you mentioned that you're in Vermont,
Yes.
Bernie introduced the Artificial Intelligence
That's
Data
right.
Center Moratorium Act.
Along with Becca Ballant, right? Or no?
She is not, I believe, yet on the House bill. I will have one of our policy people get on the horn to her and say, hey,
Awesome.
get on this, which we are doing with every member of Congress anyway, but there are certain
Yeah.
members who you anticipate should be on.
Absolutely.
There's no political downside to her being on this legislation. But tell your member of Congress, tell your other senators, Peter Welch should be on it, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
And for listeners elsewhere, reach your member of Congress, reach your senators and tell them to co-sponsor this legislation.
Yes.
Because a really interesting development happened recently. Assuming that the elections turn out the way everybody assumes they are, and the Democrats capture the House in November, Frank Pallone, who is a congressman from New Jersey, will become once again the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which, as the name implies, has oversight over data centers. And he announced in a hearing a couple of weeks ago that he supports a nationwide moratorium on data centers, which is huge.
Excellent.
Because if you have the chairman of the committee supporting the policy, then that means we can probably get hearings. We might be able to move legislation. We might be able to move other things that put the brakes on this industry, because that's what we're trying to do across the board, whether it's in your community, your state, or our country, trying to halt the construction of these massive hyperscale data centers that are causing so much damage to the communities they come into. And we haven't even really brushed the surface of what I referenced, excuse me, suggesting people kill themselves, but we haven't even really touched what AI itself is doing that harms our society, whether it's deep fake videos, whether it's Grok allowing you to strip the photo of somebody. It's just disgusting things that people can do with AI.
Right. And it's making it so much harder for any of us to trust anything that we see. And one of the things that really worries me about that is when there are issues happening like what we saw in Minneapolis with ICE, and regular people on the street are taking video. How do we know going forward that all of these citizen filmed things are not going to be corrupted or taken?
Right. Right. It's undermining the very concept of a shared truth, which was already being undermined, as we all know, by cable news and the internet.
Absolutely.
But this is just putting that on steroids. And you can't have a functioning democracy if you can't agree on some basic facts. And we were already suffering from that. This is going to just make it so much worse. We at Food and Water Watch are deeply concerned about AI. We don't use it in any of our communications. There are now taglines at the bottom of our emails that say, written by a human, never by AI.
Oh, that's interesting.
Little secret, it's not always written by the human whose name is on it, because we have a team who writes emails. No,
but at least it's a human.
But it is a human. So we don't use it. But other people do, obviously. It's being used for television commercials for the election. Again, both parties are using it. We are a nonpartisan organization. We have to have this shared understanding of the world that we live in order to have a functioning democracy. It's key. And so we have decided, though, to focus really on the data centers as the material instantiation, for lack of a better word, of this issue, because this is where the rubber hits the road. If you don't have these data centers, then you're not going to be able to do artificial general intelligence. You're not going to be able to do a lot of these things, but it's also where it affects people most materially, because it affects your pocketbook with your electricity bills. It affects your ability to have safe, affordable, and clean drinking water. It affects your local community's land use and whether or not you're still going to have agriculture and woodland in your community for people to use. A lot of hunter and angler societies are opposed to data centers because they're losing where they hunt and where they fish.
Oh, wow.
Old school conservation type folks who want to preserve the outdoors for outdoor activities.
Right.
And then you get into the issues of the localized health impacts. We haven't even touched on what happens with the e-waste.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little
Okay.
bit. Tell us about that.
Who knows?
Oh.
Right? Who knows?
Okay.
They don't have plans for it. But NVIDIA is creating a new powerful chip every few months. At some point, if you've got a warehouse full of 3-generation old chips, well, then you can't do the newest cutting edge model.
Recycle them or repurpose them in any
Well,
way?
they could potentially get recycled, that they could potentially take them out and take the rare earth minerals out, but that in and of itself is a dirty process.
And just
With-
getting those rare earth minerals,
It's a
that's
very
a
dirty
huge issue
process.
already.
Yes. It's extremely harmful to the areas where they're being mined.
Isn't it
We
often
also
women?
need them for renewables.
And-
Anybody who supports renewables needs to
That's
realize
a tricky
that.
thing.
It is a tricky thing, but we should acknowledge it
Yeah.
because the other side will come back and say that to us.
Exactly.
Should acknowledge it. I was speaking with somebody who deals a bit more in the international environmental field. And their concern was that a lot of the e-waste will end up being put on ships and sent to Africa and just dumped in landfills there.
Oh my word.
We
You're
already do
talking-
with a lot of our plastic.
Yes. Oh my, the whole topic of plastic. But just so listeners understand, e-waste is what exactly?
E-waste is essentially, it's electronic waste. That's what the
Okay.
E stands for. So it's any old electronic device. Every time you
Yes.
upgrade your computer, every time
Or
you get a new
phone or whatever.
phone, every time you throw away your lightning chargers, when you go and upgrade the phone or the watch, if it doesn't get reused or recycled in some way, it's e-waste. Because basically what a data center is thousands and thousands to millions of computer chips housed in one location. If you're having to upgrade those on a regular basis, and the chips aren't of much value to the industry anymore, maybe they can be repurposed for something else. But who's going to want to buy a 3-generation old chip? Because again, you're not going to be able to use it for the most advanced new process, which is why the data center would be upgrading anyway. So what happens to it? Well, it's going to end up most likely in a landfill somewhere in this world, whether it's local or abroad.
That stuff never
North
breaks
Pacific
down.
stuff. And it's not going to break down, but it will leach,
Right.
right? You know, landfills already leach a lot of
And isn't there a lot of plastic with that too?
Yes, because the chips basically are plastic.
Housed in plastic.
Yeah, they're housed in plastic. Exactly. Yeah. If you've ever seen a broken open computer, you see the green plastic board that all of the
The
circuits are on.
motherboard.
The motherboard. Exactly.
I was talking to one of our staff members on the farm today, and he had heard a story about Australia was repurposing sewage water to use for cooling data centers. Is that thing about that?
Yeah. So water reuse is a big, we call it a greenwashing technique.
That's what I was going to ask you about. It's like, what
Yeah.
are the greenwashing stories that we should be aware of?
Yeah, water reuse.
Yeah.
Now, for the cooling systems for data centers, the water has to be very pure. And they
Oh,
also then have to treat it frequently because you get deposits in the pipes for the
Okay.
cooling systems. If I have a window air conditioning unit, and I was saying to my partner the other day, oh, I should probably figure out how to tear it apart and clean it. Because if you think about it, there's gunk in there that I don't
Yeah.
want to be inhaling.
becomes mold and
It
bacteria.
becomes mold and bacteria, and there's the water that drips out of it is filthy and everything else.
Yeah.
That's basically what the cooling systems in a data center is.
Oh,
So they want to have as purified water as possible.
Yep.
Because otherwise the pipes, they will start to corrode. So they keep saying they're going to reuse water, and they do. They talk about closed loop systems, but that doesn't actually recycle 100% of the water. At some point, they need to replace that water because they need to treat it. As I mentioned earlier, any water from a cooling system from a data center that gets discharged back into surface water is going to be warmer than the system it's being discharged into, and that's going to cause also localized problems. It will harm fish and other aquatic life, which is an issue that we already have with power plants anyway.
and this wastewater actually gets discharged into waterways as opposed to on land?
It would depend, but it tends to be put back into a river. If you think about nuclear power plants, they're almost always built on rivers. Why? Because the water gets treated and then discharged into the river,
Oof.
which is a outdated form of believing that the way to treat pollution is to put it out into a waterway, and that way it's going to,
Dilute it.
yeah, the dissolution of the pollution is going to take care of the problem. You don't want to live downstream of one of those and have your water intake be downstream from one of these facilities. That goes as true for a data center as well. They want to recycle the water. It's not really a solution to the issue of water use. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 75% of the water use is actually in the generation of the electricity,
Not the cooling.
not the cooling. You hear a lot of them now saying, we're going to air cool, we're going to air cool. Okay, well, that might take care of 25%.
Mm.
But if you're building fracked gas power stations on site to power your data center, they call it bring your own power, BYOP, bring your own power. This is the industry solution. It's the Trump administration solution. It's all the pro data center politicians of whatever party's solution.
Yeah.
I've already talked about how this is still going to drive up your costs because the component
Because the
parts,
demand for the electricity is going to decrease.
demand for the electricity, demand for the parts. There's
Right.
already an issue with trying to get enough turbines for the
Oh.
electric generators. So those costs go up. It reverberates across the industry.
Yeah.
So even if they are building it and it's not connected to the grid, you're still driving up the cost of the component parts for the stuff that we're left with for the grid. Not that we should be building new gas power plants, but there you are. But then you're using water to cool, and you're using water to create the steam to power the generator, the turbine in the gas power plant, because that's basically all it is, right? They're using the gas to heat the water to create steam, which then goes through the turbine and generates the electricity. And then if they're doing it well, they loop it back, but you get loss, you get evaporation. And so they need to keep bringing in water. Same is true with nuclear. So you have this water use. So bringing your own power doesn't solve that issue. And also, air cooling requires even more electricity than water cooling. So then you're compounding the problem. You're not really making the savings. These are all greenwashing solutions that the industry is hoping you and me and our listeners don't learn about, so that we will just go, oh, okay, well, they're doing better. Well, no.
One of the things that just I keep coming back to is this whole idea of, you were saying so many of these are being cited in the Southwest where it's already hot, too hot, and then adding this extra heat, that's got to have critical impact on wildlife as well as people.
Yes.
And the more of these that come up, I mean, aren't we just exacerbating what they already have?
Yeah.
Climate issues and
Yes, across the board. So there was a study, I haven't had a chance to look at it because I just saw it this morning.
okay.
The climate issue around data centers has really been focused on the fossil fuel use,
But not the heat that it's generating.
but not the heat. And now there was a study that came out just looking at the construction of data centers and the amount of climate pollution tied to the construction of data centers. Concrete is a very climate intensive product. All the pollution that goes into building them. And then there is the heat island effect of taking these large industrial complexes, popping them down in a suburb, plopping them down in a rural area, which doesn't tend to have, again, I live in Baltimore. I'm used to having a heat island around me because we're concrete and we're asphalt and our roofs and everything else. You do this in the sort of small community you live in, or the sort of small farming community I come from in Illinois, that's going to have a big impact because all of a sudden you're having heat islands where there weren't any before. Yeah. And if you live next to one of these facilities, not only do you have the noise pollution, but you're going to have thermal pollution as well.
I also wonder about farming has always been a difficult type of work, but with the kind of crazy weather, like we're anticipating possibly 70-mile-per-hour winds tomorrow. And there have been tornadoes here in Vermont and hail, which is like the death knell for a farm. Or flooding. We had 3 years in a row of July 10th flooding. This year it was July 9 instead of July 10th. But my point is that there are already so many volatile weather things happening. To add more things that are just exacerbating the problem with all the things that you mentioned. But how does this impact weather potentially?
Right.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. You know, we know that these facilities will continue to exacerbate climate change. They will.
Right. They can't not.
because of so many different input levels. And the amount of them that this industry wants to build,
Is
you
there a
know,
stated goal for numbers?
well, it varies. They're all estimates, but we're talking hundreds of gigawatts of electric power in the next 10 years. I've seen estimates of 350. I've seen estimates of 550. It's just a massive amount. 57% at the moment, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if the number's getting larger as more of these are built, of the electricity for these facilities comes from fossil fuel power.
57%.
50%. That was a year or two ago. My guess is it's actually higher because they're building more gas power plants because they're more compact. So you can build them on site, whereas I already talked about the issues of trying to build solar or wind on site for these. And I know people might think, well, why don't they just put the solar panels on the roof? They can't because of the heat and cooling issues.
Oh,
I
I
think,
did
well,
think
why don't they
about
just
that
put
and
it
I
on the
didn't say
roof?
anything. But yeah.
And that's the reason why they can't just put it on the
Ah,
roof. So they do need fields of
yeah.
it.
And are they clear cutting trees down for
In some
this too?
places, yeah. In some areas, they are taking woodland.
Oh, that's just so
Which is
disturbing.
what a lot of hunters are complaining about. Also
And
bird
of course,
watchers and campers and,
yeah, yeah.
so if we're building these huge gigawatt, 2 gigawatt, 5 gigawatt, and they're being powered by fracked gas, or for that matter, even nuclear energy, because people say, oh, well, nuclear doesn't have carbon emissions. Okay,
Or
but
it's
again,
the new nuclear.
concrete, distributed nukes, still concrete.
Yeah.
And frankly, think about it. Do you want a small nuclear reactor in your neighborhood being run by some yabo who may or may not have the proper engineering background?
Homer's to mind.
Homer Simpson does come to mind. I went to the University of Illinois and we had a nuclear reactor on campus, and that was disturbing enough.
Oh,
It's one of the top nuclear engineering schools. So we had a nuclear reactor
that
on
makes
campus.
sense.
For that matter, do you want dozens of diesel generators that they turn on when the power goes out?
Nope.
Do you want gas-fired power plants?
Nope.
No, you don't.
None of it.
But that's where this industry is at. This is what they're building, and it's just going to make climate change worse. And that's just at the electricity generation level. It doesn't even get into all of the other issues with it.
Exactly. Just to complete the set of the greenwashing claims. So we heard they're bringing their own power. We've already discounted that. Yep. The other thing I've heard is, oh, well, it's bringing jobs. That's always what they say with any kind of new thing.
No.
No.
No, there is a temporary spike in construction jobs.
To create
to build
these
it.
Things.
And then when they are done building it, they leave. I spoke with an activist recently who deals with a variety of human rights issues, and we're seeing something we saw with fracking, which is man camps, and they are man camps.
Yikes.
Get built
What
in
the
these
heck is
communities. Think of the old Wild West, right? Go watch, remember Deadwood, the TV show from HBO years ago? Think about that.
Okay.
It brings all of the problems you would expect by having a lot of young men with disposable income.
Oof. And testosterone.
And drinking problems.
Oh, yikes.
It causes huge issues. We saw this with fracking. We're seeing it with this industry as well, because they come into the community, they want to blow off steam. That leads to all sorts of issues.
Oh boy.
Then they leave, and a handful of jobs are left to maintain the data center.
Just overseeing the machines.
They're overseeing the machines. Maybe there's an executive and there's a janitorial crew, but even that is maybe just a handful of people who go around to all the various data centers. It's not like you need a janitor on site all the time. You can go to our website. We did a case study looking at Virginia. Not only are very few jobs left behind, but the amount of investment required to create those jobs is so much larger than it is to create a job in any other industry. We're talking hundreds of times more money spent to create one full-time job than you spend in other industries. So it's millions and millions of dollars to create one job, which frankly isn't going to pay that much relative to the investment. So the jobs claim is bogus. It's a boom and bust. It's not the job creator that the industry claims it is. The whole water reuse isn't real. The air cooling solution brings the problem of increased electricity usage, which increases water usage. So all of their solutions
are problematic,
which again is why we need to stop building these things so that we can do the studies to figure out how, and I always emphasize if
Yeah, I was going to say if it even,
If this industry can actually build them in a way that is safe, that actually gives back to the community instead of just
right,
taking from it and
right.
doesn't harm society at large. And that's why we need to have a moratorium, a halt, a pause, call it what you will, on these hyperscale data centers. And no, that doesn't mean you won't still be able to watch Amazon Prime, or we
Yeah.
won't still be able to get on Zoom and record a podcast.
Yeah.
You'll still be able to use your iPhone or your phone because we use those before these data centers existed, and
Right.
we could continue to use them without them.
Perfect way to end, Mitch.
Thank you.
Absolutely incredibly important information. And I really hope people share this with their
Yeah.
friends and family members, because I feel like it's going to take a community
Yes.
literally to stop these things, because
Yes.
there's only so much that you guys can do and working with politicians. But I think what you said about working on the hyper local level
Yeah.
is so important, because that's where most people can get super active,
Yeah.
because it really impacts them. And I know there are communities that are having success actually
Yep.
banning these different data centers. So
Yep.
such good work. Foodandwaterwatch.org.
Foodandwaterwatch.org.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. And people can find that toolkit for how to organize.
Yeah. Or you could also just Google Food and Water Watch Data Center Toolkit. Google's AI will tell you we are the leading organization fighting data centers in the country. I want everybody to know the industry is going to tell you that this future they're selling is inevitable. It isn't. It's based on a series of political decisions being made right now, being made in your town, your county, your state, our country, and across the world. And when we band together, we can stop it. And we know that because we are winning and they are running scared. And that's why they're attacking us. We can do this. Go to our website, get that toolkit, stop your local data center, keep the ball rolling, because we have these guys on the back foot and we can make them run in the opposite direction.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your important work,
You, Amy.
again, for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. And